All right, so we're back on the podcast with Loveita, Danny. We're currently right after the swap on day 8.
What a day. What a day.
Yes,
No
there's
kidding.
a lot to cover. The last time we spoke, I think it was only like day 3 or something. So we have a lot to go over. Luckily, we've had these handy notes this season, which have helped a
right,
lot.
I should pull those up. It's a phenomenal idea. A lot going on, but mainly only on one tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really not been much on the men's tribe at all.
No.
Aside from on day 4, it looks like Ace one clue solved the immunity idol.
Yeah, that's about the only exciting thing that happened.
That being said, there has been so much going on with the women. I mean, it's almost like a merge. It's weird. This week was pretty nuts. I would say Australian stranded level of activity and alliance making.
At least on the women's side, yeah, I agree with that. It's been, I mean, anytime I log on, I've counted at least like 4 or 5 of the people off of the women's tribe online, constantly chatting all day long. And you'll go over and look at the men's tribe and they'll have like maybe just Eric lurking, waiting for somebody else to get on.
Yeah, I don't even know kind of where to begin. There were so many. I guess the biggest thing with the women that we found is that they're, and the men too, is that they've been forming pairs.
Mm-hmm.
And those pairs have kind of shifted on who's working with whom. Just to say on the men's tribe, we know there's like, Loveita pointed out, it's like the alliteration alliance going on because there's Randy and Ron, Charlie and Chris,
Maddie and Marcus.
And then on the women's tribe,
You've got Reem and Susie. You've got Lauren and Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the only 2 that are like very tight. And then I don't know.
Jillian is kind of in with Reem and Susie, but
yeah, this council, it broke up. There were 2 pretty divided groups. Groups of 3, really. Aurora kind of joining Michelle and Lauren, and Crystal in with Susie and Reem, and then Jillian kind of floating to that group too, making the 4 that booted Jackie.
right, both groups kind of fighting over Jillian as a consolation for not voting her out.
Who would have thought?
Not me.
Yeah, I can't believe, first of all, that challenge score was so god awful.
Yeah, that is where we should start. That 23-minute 4 penalty challenge from Jillian, just blowing it out of the water.
This was really like their first opportunity to compete individually within their tribes. And we really got to see who was good and who was bad. And we really saw that Jillian was terrible. I mean, a good 13 minutes above anybody else's time in the entire game.
I mean, not only was she slow, she is the only person in the entire game to get a question wrong.
And she got 5 wrong.
So you could listen to it 3 times through, answer the questions, and still get like half the time that Jillian wound up getting on this challenge.
And not only did she get like 4 or 5 wrong, I think I just gave her 1 because it was like borderline.
She said something was on a hill when it was a mountain, and we were just like,
yeah, so like,
same thing.
You know,
she got the change in elevation portion.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just gave her that because it was pathetic at that point. But I mean, God, she had even without the penalties, even if she got everything right, she still had 11 minutes, which is 2 minutes slower than everyone else. So,
and that's not something you can blame on being mobile or being, not tech savvy. This is a reading or a listening comprehension test for a 3-minute story.
Even if you could blame it on that, why would you keep someone who's bound by mobile if it's costing you challenges, especially when there's only going to be 7 people left,
I completely agree.
I mean, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Let's say it was totally technical issues or whatever. That should concern you. That should be like, I don't want a technical issue in the next challenge when I might be going home because she sucks, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think what really did it for me is like when you have people who are tight pairs like Lauren and Michelle, and you have people who are in a little bit of a larger alliance say like that group of like Crystal and Aurora and Reem and Susie, like people who were all together right away off the bat. Jillian has been kind of driving them nuts the entire time. They've all brought it up. They've all recognized that she's a goat and easy to beat. When I think about that, I think about we are at 18. If people are going to try and drag that goat to the end, that's a spot at every point for the rest of the game that I potentially might not have. I mean, if it's a final 3, that's 15 rounds that people are going to be dragging her ass along. Like that's 15 rounds where people aren't going to consider cutting her to cut you because they all want her to be a goat.
Yeah, and off of
in my mind, that's somebody you want gone.
Yeah, and off of that, if you're 3 days into the game and you're saying this is the person I want as my goat next to me, you have to assume that you are not the only person who's pinned that down.
It's so early. I mean, good Lord.
It's so early. If you can get that good of a read on somebody so early to know that they stand no chance of winning this game, why keep them around? You have to know everybody else will too.
I'm not, like, in these things, I push that. And I push it pretty early, but I'm not even at that point of pushing get rid of the goats, you know, because I mean that should be a no-brainer. This is a new player season, so it's not like they have to worry about that just yet. It's so bizarre. Is this just a case of overplaying, the women disliking each other so much that it clouded their judgment? What do you think is the reason why they did this?
I think they're thinking 30 steps ahead. Mm-hmm. They're just like, I think. And this is something that, you know, I've seen in some other games that I've played as well, where there are just some people who they're playing for the final 5, final 4, final 3 on day 3. And they forget that, like, yes, you want to sit by a goat at the end, but like having to drag 2 people all the way to the end is really difficult. Like you don't want to be looking at who you can beat until at least the merge. And at the merge, you need to reassess.
Half the players yet. Exactly.
Right. Like there's so much game, so much can go wrong. And like, I don't know what Miss Jillian is giving you that makes you think she's going to be loyal to you. But like, if somebody thinks they're a goat or it catches on at any point that they're getting dragged along, they have no incentive to go with you to the end. I don't understand the logic.
So let me play devil's advocate. Is this the worst move? Like for us as hosts, obviously it's annoying because we want to see someone like Jackie stay. But for the players in the game, and maybe not all of them, but was this a bad move for even some of the players?
I think I would say it was a bad move because they didn't know a swap was coming.
Right.
They thought the tribe was going to stay together through another round, and because of that, they should have gotten rid of... They've lost 3 challenges in a row. And
right.
There's very clearly somebody who's not going to be able to assist you in challenges.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not a bad move in terms of the big picture, especially because we're going to swap now. But it's a terrible move in the short term for them, I think, because it's almost like they're not even worried about the challenge. It's weird. For me, I would be like, we need to get rid of dead weight because I'm not going to tribal council again. They're like not even worried about it. I don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone should ever be basing their strategy around challenges. Like, yes, you want to keep people around that are going to be good at challenges so you don't have to go to tribal. But like, I don't ever think in the tribal portion of the game, your strategy should be solely focused around, you know what I mean? Like, I think that there's so much more to the game than just we want to win so we don't go to tribal. But when somebody has been so abysmal for 3 challenges in a row, then it starts to be an issue of if I'm on the same tribe as them, there's no way that we're not going to wind up back here.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that the women who were so adamant about keeping Jillian can rely on her vote going forward?
No.
It's interesting. I think if anybody... I think Reem will... she ended up on the swap with Reem. And I think Jillian might feel a little close to Reem and reliant on Reem after that. But I think if she gets any hint or any suspicion that Reem is against her, she's just going to flip immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, Reem did just post a confessional where she said that she's very excited to see Jillian on her tribe because I saved her last tribal council, so I have her in my pocket. As if, like, a move is automatically like required to be repaid.
Yeah, I still think, I don't know, I think Reem will come out of it on top because that's just how Reem is.
Yeah, I think Reem will be okay.
Before we get into the new tribes,
interesting. Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you, Loveita, because I know you're big into psychology. So,
understatement.
Yeah, really. So, how was this divide of men versus women for you? Was it interesting? Was it just whatever? How has it been for you so far?
Well, I don't do a lot of gender research. I try to stay away from that sort of stuff in my research, but I definitely liked the pattern of the women talking just so much more, and the types of conversations they had were very, very different from even the types of conversations the men would be having. These women are sharing personal life stories, talking about their families, and the men are talking about Survivor or what's going on in the tribe, but never really sharing information to each other about themselves.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I think the more interesting part will come now that they're mixed genders, because we'll see how that groundwork plays into the rest of the season. Because, typically, the original tribes are a big deal, especially in a new player season going forward. But we even saw it in Australian Stranded with returnees. I think it's just human nature. When you start off with a group of people, that's where your loyalty lies, at least in the back of your head. So I wonder if that will play a factor, especially because there were such obvious divisions, or if maybe people were looking forward to getting something different,
That's interesting. I think you could make arguments either way. I'd probably lean towards the normal pattern of sticking to the original tribes. You even see the first alliances formed tend to just be the first people you talk to.
Right.
And then those are the only people you're talking to on that tribe, so that tends to stay pretty thick. And that very clear division of grouping, I think, tends to exacerbate that fact that, hey, we were always on different tribes. Once you start melding things together when groups aren't as clear cut, it tends to be a little bit harder to remember. We know even just watching shows like Survivor that sometimes we can't even remember what the original tribe divisions were.
Right.
Yeah. I think it also depends on where you were on your original tribe. So the people who felt very safe on their original tribe are going to be 10 times more likely to be preaching, let's stay like men's tribe strong, let's stay women tribe strong. Whereas somebody like, let's say, Michelle and Lauren, who have always kind of felt like they were on the outside of like a bigger group, they weren't really sure who the big group was, but they're like, something's definitely off. Those two are probably way more likely to push for some sort of cross-tribal alliance because it benefits them. It doesn't benefit them to try and fight for a group that's only going to cut them later down the line.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but it's almost like we have these characters that we've known so well with the women's tribe, or have gotten to know so well. And now it's like we have these other players that have entered the game, even though they've been in the game with the men's tribe. We've not seen much from them because they haven't had to, and they've kind of been smart in laying low, but really laying low. Like, I don't know much about them. So it's almost like we have these new players entering the game with our established characters that we know and love. And I'm very interested to see what happens. It would be weird to me if the majority of the pre-merge were women boots, because we'd be left with a lot of people we don't know as well. So just from like a character development standpoint, us watching, it would be odd, but maybe that would be kind of cool, where we had the pre-merge defined by women boots and the post-merge by this other group that we're getting to know slowly.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think that we've seen enough now from Ron talking about wanting to get some revenge on people on his tribe. We've seen Randy talk about it. We've seen War Dog talk about it. There are plenty of people in that men's tribe that I think are really itching to play the game. And none of them strike me as people who are just going to stick with the men to stay long term, especially the ones who are showing up on the bottom of every ranking. They know that there's nothing for them to like stick to that group of people.
I know, and I don't know if it's just because I said that Ron reminded me of Dale, or that he kind of looks like Dale, the characters, but that just makes me feel like he's going to be bouncing back and forth, and I hope he is. I mean, he was pretty low in both rankings, two of the rankings anyway. And
I was going to say the only people that I've seen, or the only person that I've seen for sure express that they want to stay men's strong is Chris, which of course makes sense because Chris was at the top for the most likable. He was at the top for the most loyal. The group loves him, so he wants that group to stay together because that's the group that's going to take him the furthest in the game.
Ace has been preaching that too to all of the men on his tribe, but I don't know if that's how he thinks personally.
I mean, we'll see.
We'll take a look at the two tribes for a little bit. I think it's interesting that all of the men's pairings got split up, right?
They did.
Yeah,
Yes.
Chris and Charlie are in separate tribes. Randy and Ron and Marcus, Maddie are, well, they could be together, but Maddie's on the tribe of his own. So right now they're all kind of divided. Nobody has their safety blanket.
Well, I think I was
going to say, but the women all have their safety blankets intact just by chance. Michelle obviously didn't know any of the dynamics on the men's tribe. But so now we have, I don't know. I could really see the women doing well just by virtue of having someone that they trust and the men not having that necessarily.
I was going to say, I think, based on what I read as well, I think Michelle just did every other person for the rankings in order to form the tribes. I think that's how she split it up.
Genius.
So if these pairs were kind of lumped together in those rankings on the men's tribe, that would explain that.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how she divided the tribes. I mean, for a second I thought, oh no, she's just going to put all 7 women on one tribe, and then obviously Ron would not be on that tribe. Which would have been fine. I mean, I think she divided them really evenly, like super evenly. And I think we have 2 very interesting tribes. I really hope it comes down to we always hope every season that the tribe swaps end up being personality driven versus tribe loyalty. But this season in particular, I'd really like to see some of those tribal lines break down.
Definitely.
I mean, we can only hope.
Of the 2 tribes, what are your first impressions? Do you guys like how they were divided? Do you think they're imbalanced, or?
Well, one has Jillian in it, so
off the bat, they're off to a bad start.
That's going to be hard. But
I think that they're pretty evenly split as far as the challenge abilities go. Michelle, Reem, Lauren, War Dog, they've been consistently good at the challenges,
yes.
And so have Ace, Crystal, Devins. I don't think either tribe is really set apart that way. I think that the new Taraku tribe, the red tribe, I think that tribe is going to be the more active and more strategic tribe of the 2, because I would say that Eric, Randy, Devins, they are kind of just non-entities in my mind. Like, they show up and so far haven't really had to do too much. So I'll be interested to see what they do moving forward, whereas the other tribe seems to have a lot of people that have had their hands in a lot of pots so far.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think for us, this is like we finally get to meet some of the men. I mean, we know what they're about. We know how they kind of play, but we haven't seen them play. So I'll be excited to see how they do. And I'll be excited to see if they live up to their hype. I'd like to see if Ace and Randy in particular are these crazy players that they claim to be. Here's your opportunity. You're in a majority on a new tribe. Do you stick with that, or do you start playing hard?
I think Randy would be my first pick to start flipping things. Randy's
already mentioned wanting to flip, so.
Yeah, he said he wants to, and he had that video confessional where he said if he would have been picked first for the opportunity to swap on day 1, he would have done it. Even if it screwed him, he said, I just want to play hard.
What a king.
So I think he could just do it just for the hell of it,
I think that this new Atlasova tribe could get really interesting too if they lose with the 2 idols in play on that tribe. Both of the idols ended up on that tribe with Ace and Susie. So with this women's minority here, we'll need to see if Susie feels like she might need to play that idol and try to idol out one of these guys.
I was thinking that Michelle unknowingly also gave the minority women on that tribe the idol, so it was kind of perfect for her. This division for her was really good. She did a good job, just unknowingly, randomly. It ended up being a pretty even split.
Yeah, and her ending up with Lauren too, I think was great because she was starting to doubt Aurora. So her and Lauren do really well together.
Yeah. Do we think she knew she was going to be on the new Taraku?
I mean, we had talked about how, the strategy that we were worried was going to happen was she was going to place most of the women on one tribe and most of the men on another to confirm that Ron would pick the tribe with more men. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Lauren wound up on the tribe that would wind up with a 50-50 split if he moved over there.
Yeah.
I think that it was intentional to put her, and especially in the same tribe as Jillian, to try and move somebody away. But I don't know if that was exactly her thought process.
Okay, so for me, I'll just wrap up the men versus women thing. Since it's over, I get to talk about it. I think, we didn't set out to do it, so it's not like it was this huge build-up. We obviously didn't cast around that or play in challenges around that or anything that a normal men's versus women season would have happen. So it's not that big of a deal to me that the women lost every challenge because that's not what the concept of the season was. It just so happened that we had all these interesting women that applied, and we ended up with, I think, gender aside, one of the best tribes we've ever had, at least in terms of entertainment.
Nut jobs. Absolute crazy people.
And if you think about it, we only really lost one active woman.
Right.
I mean,
True.
Victoria and Julie weren't, Julie showed up, but then she disappeared off the face of the earth. So they were pretty easy boots while the women kept stirring those pots and doubting each other every time they had to go to tribal, wondering if other people were plotting. So I think part of why tribal went down how it went down as well is just because they've been building up this paranoia for so long.
Right, like they've scrambled 3 times already only to not have to vote.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree, Poody. I think that the bigger issue isn't the fact that the women lost. It's not like anything was a blowout. They were worse at challenges. They were competitive in all 3 of the challenges that we did so far this season. It wasn't like any of them were a huge blowout.
It was just the one person for each challenge on the men who really pulled through.
Right.
I think a lot of it comes down to experience in gaming too. I don't think any of the women, aside from Jillian, and we saw how that turned out, had experience in gaming.
Crystal does.
Crystal does.
But like kind of half-asses Discords, from what I understand.
Yeah, I don't see the challenge beast side of gaming that came out with. No. I think
it's not like somebody like Devins who's done that exact type of puzzle before with the image
like
posting.
Today, War Dog thinking outside the box and listening to his story on 1.75 speed.
Mm-hmm. It's just those things that come with experience.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see. I mentioned this earlier before we had the swap, but I'll be interested to see how gaming experience comes into play socially, because this is a social game. And the fact of the matter is there are more players that are new to gaming than there are veterans of gaming. So do they fit in with them? Are they pushed out to the side? I'm interested to see if that affects the dynamics. And gamers are not used to playing with women, just because the ORG world, especially on Discord, is really skewed. I'd say like 80 or 90% male to female. So in this situation where they're pretty even, I wonder how they'll mix, or if they'll be able to adjust their games for the different style,
Yeah, I have no idea.
I am very unfamiliar with the org community as a whole. But, this Stranded itself tends to be much more of a social game, I've gotten the impression, than most other orgs. So the men might actually, the experienced gamers might actually lean into that, liking that new kind of experience that Stranded allows. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, we talk about that in casting a lot, is like we have to untrain other gamers because they're used to games where there's not this huge element of bonding. It's not as real. It's just, show up and vote, pick a random target. And, there's different there's different types of games out there, and these long form games are kind of dying out. There's not as many of them as there used to be. So certainly a lot of the new school players are not used to this type of game. And sometimes that means that they're not active, as I think is happening with Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it means, that they have to adjust their game. Some of them are looking to level up to a more competitive environment. Some of them are not up to that challenge. They expect it to be less active. They expect it to be easier, and then they just check out. Could go either way. I'm happy to see that, at least with War Dog and Randy, I think that they've taken to the new style of gaming like a duck to water. Whereas I think players like Devins and Maddie are kind of getting left out of the social aspect of it. I could be off.
I can see that. I would agree with that. I'm very interested. One of the things we haven't talked about yet is Maddie being that lone and no triber, and whether or not he's going to get online at some point and embrace that role and use it to his advantage, or if he's not going to come back at all or not enough, and we might end up just needing to drop him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I kind of think the latter will happen. Maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's not even that we have to drop him, but I think it might just be a non-factor. He'll join a tribe after someone's voted out, and then quickly be the next boot. Is kind of how I see it going.
Not if they're going to be stupid and play men strong, though.
Yeah.
Worst case, worst outcome.
I don't think I really think a lot of this is the men have been waiting to play. I think some of them. And I think the women are so in the trenches at this point that I think that they'll welcome a lot of the conversation and a lot of the gameplay that's going on. And I'm kind of hoping that what ends up happening is the women bring that out in the men who have been laying dormant. I think maybe that might benefit some people like Charlie and War Dog, who are super social, and it might hurt people like Marcus and Devins, who are kind of just laying low.
I have the same read as you on that, Poody. I think the women's activity is going to excite these men who've been waiting around and nothing's been happening, and they're going to really just go into it hard. That's what I'm hoping for. So.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, these are Survivor fans, and they're fans of the game. And I think that they're going to want to play with other people who are on board and that they click with. And if I'm just putting myself in their shoes. If I was online all the time and I didn't have anyone to talk to, but someone else was always online, I would naturally gravitate towards that person.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all I have to add to this conversation. Is there anything that you guys want to talk about that has happened so far that we haven't touched on?
I think we've covered most of it.
Yeah, I think we've covered most things. I can't think of anything.
Okay, it is getting late, so I think I'm going to call it on this podcast. I am looking forward to seeing how these tribes do. We'll catch up again on Sunday. You guys are welcome to join, depending on how many people are in it, and we'll go from there. I think we'll be doing a lot more frequent podcasts, so be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, you said next week's really going to heat up the pace, right?
Yes, I think it was a mistake to have it so slow this first week. I mean, it's been nice to get to know people, but I think it's hurt the men's activity level. So I think a faster pace and more vote-offs will hopefully kickstart them into the real game. So things to look forward to. And we have some more twists coming, so we'll see what happens with these guys. Overall, though, I think so far this season has been very entertaining. You can't complain with the pre-merge at all. So I hope that translates into an interesting rest of the season.
I'm excited to see where it goes. I am obviously watching closely.
All right, guys.
All right. Thanks. See you later.